Hey everybody, my name is Amber. I'm a mom of 10 kids and we live in New York City, and the reason we moved to New York City is because our kids are all classically trained musicians, and it just seemed like some of the other cities we were in that didn't have like some of the opportunities that the city had, and so we packed up and moved here, and it's been a challenge. But amongst other things and teachers and some of the things that are available in the city, one of the more standout opportunities that's available in New York City is the Juilliard School of Music and Manhattan School of Music, and people are telling me about other music schools that are located in the city that are just really standout schools. And of course there's not just classical music, there's jazz, there's so much. Like, I guess June is music month in New York City, and so there's like workshops and how to like get started, and so just there's a lot going on here. The Juilliard School even has something called Music Advancement Program, where they go into the 5 boroughs of New York City and work with kids maybe that wouldn't have the financial opportunity to have music in their lives. So yeah, the city is very serious about music. Last year, 7 of our children actually auditioned for Juilliard, 2 of them in the college program, 5 of them in the pre-college program. And 2 of them got accepted to the pre-college program, and 1 of them got accepted to the college program. But the other kid, Josiah, didn't get accepted to the college program. He did get accepted at Manhattan School of Music, which is also a really great school. So it was kind of a win-win situation. Now, the 3 that did not get accepted to Juilliard pre-college, they have been studying with Juilliard pre-college teachers, or at least somewhat associated with the school. So Elijah's been studying with somebody named Leo Singer, who's associated with somebody named Richard Aaron, who is like one of the more notable teachers at the Juilliard School. Sometimes he teaches pre-college, sometimes he doesn't. It just depends on who's, you know, coming down the pike. All of the kids have really, like this year, have just skyrocketed, whether or not they actually got accepted to the school, you know, they wanted to go to. But the kids don't quit, you know, and so this year, Elijah, Anna, and Chloe, who did not get accepted last year to Juilliard pre-college, are auditioning this year. And today is the day of the audition. So this morning at 11:30, I think it was running a little late, so it might have been like 11:40, Anna auditioned, and Mark was sitting in the room next to the audition, and he was texting me, and he's like, okay, Anna's playing Vivaldi. Okay, now she's playing the Bach. Okay, now they're asking for the etude. So he's like, you know, play by, because he can hear, if you're under 12, if the kid's under 12, they let the parent like go back there and like kind of be like moral support, you know. If your kid's over 12, they're like, leave them at the door, let them find their way. So anyway, but Anna is 11, so they let, you know, Mark back there. And so Anna did her audition, and he's like, yeah, it sounds really good. And then Elijah, right now, he's playing with the accompanist. The accompanist's house is close to the Juilliard School, and so he's at the accompanist's house, and he's kind of working through his pieces. The more you can work with a piano as a, you know, an instrumentalist, the better, because it's just so awkward to, you know, go from playing by yourself to playing with a piano. Like, it's just kind of a different, it just feels different, you know. You've got this constant beat and everything. So anyway, so after that, I think around 4:20, maybe a little later, he's going to have his in-person audition at the Juilliard School for the pre-college program. And then tomorrow, I think it's at 11:20. These times are always a little bit fluid because if they're running behind or early or whatever. But tomorrow, Chloe is going to have her audition at 11:20. And then we are done with the Juilliard pre-college auditions, and it's like, it feels like, probably if you're hearing this, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but the kids have just been working towards it, and I like, if they get in or don't get in, it's not a huge deal. It's just, it is a really special program. It's like kind of like music lessons, but like with so many extras. So you've got orchestra and chamber music and music theory, and then there's like this culture of like excellence kind of surrounding you that kind of spurs you on. Like when the kids were in like Suzuki lessons, you know, when they were younger, just such a, it's a camaraderie, you know, and it helps you feel like, oh, I'm not alone in this, you know, striving for excellence. Like, it's kind of like a chess club, but better. It's like better than a chess club. So that's happening now, and they've been working really hard, and you know, they have the pieces all planned out, and there's certain pieces that they expect to hear you play, and so that's what's going on right now. And I mean, what's interesting to me is these teachers that our kids are meeting with are associated with the school, and they know what's going on behind the scenes. And what's interesting is this year, they are only accepting 4 cellists. There are only 4 spots open for cello players, which is like, last year there were 15 spots. This year there's only 4, so the competition is fierce, you know? And so we're trying not to be too like, oh, you know, what I told the kids is you get in, great. If you don't get in, God has other plans for you. Elijah not getting in last year was actually a blessing because he got to work with Leo Singer, who's associated with the University of Michigan, like, so, like, over Zoom and so forth. So, and Leo just, you know, has had like so much ability that Elijah currently has. Like, just like last year when he was auditioning, it just seemed like he was kind of searching for notes. Like, he has perfect pitch, so he knows what those notes are supposed to sound like, but knowing what those notes are supposed to sound like and being able to just, you know, on a on a whim, just stick your fingers on the right spot on the fingerboard. No frets, nothing. I mean, that's a totally different story, and there's a huge amount of technique that goes into that. Leo Singer, Richard Aaron have kind of helped him find those spots on the fingerboard, and I've seen a really remarkable improvement, so I'm super grateful for that. Anyway, downstairs Enoch and Melody are having their online violin lesson, so if you hear the music, that's who's playing. I think it's the Sights Concerto. Yeah, that's what's going on. And so of course Mama is praying. Mark's been sending out the prayer texts and so forth. Obviously, if you see this, you know, prayer would be, you know, appreciated. Of course, it'll probably be after they've already done their audition, but you know, those decisions are made afterwards. So I'm just praying for God's favor. One thing that we do before we have anything big like this is we watch a movie called Facing the Giants. I think it was in 2004 or something. It's a kind of a vintage like Christian movie, but it's about this like kind of like not so good performing coach and this football team that's kind of lousy, and like high school football, like they're no good, and so like the coach that drives a car that doesn't work. I mean, just you know, they're trying, the coach and his wife are trying to have a baby, they can't have a baby, like just everything is going wrong, like the school's falling apart, like things are not going well. We like to watch this movie because it helps us kind of, like, that's what we feel like. We feel like, okay, nothing's working out. But what ends up happening in the movie is, you know, the coach, he starts praying and he starts just asking for a miracle, that there's like a revival at the school, and like things start falling into place. Yes, it's a fictitious story and it's a little too perfect how everything ends. It kind of sets our mind in the right like gear, you know, like at the end of the movie, how they end up winning like the state championship or whatever, even though they used to be this lousy team, now they're doing really well, is there's this soccer player that they turned into like a kicker or something, and it's, I don't know if it's penalty kick or whatever. I am not a football whiz. I still like the movie though. But he's supposed to kick the ball, and if he, you know, kicks the ball, then they win the game. It's like through this, you know, thing. Sorry, if you know football, you know what that thing is. Anyway, so the wind is going against them. You can tell by this flag, so the wind's going against where he's going to kick the ball, so that's obviously not a good time to kick the ball. And then like the wind shifts, and it's like towards where he's going to kick the ball, and so he kicks the ball and it goes through the whatever that thing is that you kick the ball through to get the points in football. And so basically when the coach sees the wind change with that flag, he's like, kick it now, you know. And so that's what I tell the kids. I'm like, you know, we don't know what's gonna happen, but we definitely need to have like a kick it now moment and try your best and leave the results to God. And that's kind of the premise of the movie. And so anyway, so we watched that last night, and it just helps us just have peace. Like, okay, God's gonna work this out. If it's His will, it's gonna happen. You know, I just actually read that today. I forget what the Bible reference verse is, but I read about how, you know, if we ask something and it is God's will, it's gonna happen. So that's where we're at, and so your prayers are appreciated. Oh, and I was gonna tell you something else. So what's interesting too is the pre-college program is a really interesting program, because there's a lot of kids in there that, like, maybe 50% of them actually want to grow up and be professional musicians. But there are also a lot of kids there that are really good at music, but, you know, they're, you know, the more, maybe their parents or whatever are more interested in like how that's going to look on like the Harvard application. So like this one of the teachers that my son has studied with a little bit, you know, was kind of discouraged because he had 4 students that he taught, and they were in pre-college and they were really good musicians, you know. And you know, all 4 of them ended up going to Harvard, which is like, well, that's, you know, kudos, that's great. But basically Harvard is not a place you necessarily go if you're going to be a professional musician. You know, you go to Curtis or Juilliard or something. So this teacher was just kind of discouraged and just put his whole self into teaching these kids, and they're, you know, off to law school or whatever. I mean, a lot of young people, or a lot of parents of young people, know that it's hard to make a living as a musician, and I understand that. I mean, I've definitely told all my boys, especially, because I mean, even nowadays, you know, people don't ask what I do for a living. They're like, oh, you know, what does your husband do for a living? It's just, even in our, like, you know, woke new world, people still expect a man to, like, support his family and so forth. And so I'm telling especially my sons, I'm like, okay guys, like, I definitely, if you guys want to study music, I definitely think you should study music. You know, but maybe study some business classes. Maybe, you know, like Josiah's maybe getting prepared for the LSAT, which is the preparatory test for law school. You know, I'm just like, you know, be open, you know. So, I mean, and here's the thing, people are like, oh, you know, you're forcing your kids to do music. I am not. I mean, I've definitely had the let's be practical kids conversation, but I mean, if I could almost say, like, I would bet money on this. If I was to be like, okay, you can either be a, like, let's say, like, for sure, no matter what you do, you're gonna make a living wage. I don't know what a living wage is nowadays. I mean, it almost feels like a living wage is $300,000 a year. Like, that's what a, you know, a decent doctor, lawyer salary is if things are going well for you. You know, because I see news programs where there's families making $100,000 a year nowadays with inflation, and they're in the food bank line. I mean, that's how bad things have gotten. So, I mean, maybe the extra $200,000, maybe that means, okay, you can go on a family vacation and you can buy that house, or, I mean, to do all the, like, normal American dream things nowadays, you have to make a ton of money. It's crazy. So, like, let's say, just hypothetically, that, okay, like, let me just say Josiah, you can do anything you want. You know, you can be a lawyer, you can do music, you know, you can be a doctor, you can do any of these things. All these jobs are going to pay you $300,000. You're going to have a living wage from no matter what you do. You know, what would you pick? I think, not Josiah, I think all of the kids would probably pick music, because, I mean, a lot of the other jobs, while there's reward there, I mean, there's just something, like, soaring about music. You know, like, you practice with the orchestra, you know, then you play the Tchaikovsky and everyone claps, and, you know, like, something, or you teach, or there's just kind of it's all of it is work. It's all work, but it's really special work. It's like really like moving, almost spiritual work in music, you know what I mean? It's so, and honestly, in classical music, you can go the distance so much more as a classical musician than like a rock musician or whatever. Like at 60 as a rock musician, you're like, oh, why are you still playing? You know, you're an old guy. But, you know, there's 90-year-old Ivory Gitlis, you know, I don't know if he's still alive, but I mean, he was playing into his 90s. Like, if you tried to be a rock star in your 90s, it'd be like, you're crazy. So, I mean, classical music, I know if I could just, like, oh, you know, you're gonna make this much money no matter what you do, I think all my kids would choose to be classical musicians. I'm just trying to steer them towards, you know, maybe their strengths that are also, I know music's gonna be a big part of their lives no matter what, but I'm just also trying to be a little bit practical. And, I mean, like Elijah, I think he could be an amazing businessman, but he loves cello. So I'm like, you know, if you look at even a place like Juilliard, not everybody that works at Juilliard is a teacher or, you know, an active player of their instrument. Sometimes people that work at Juilliard, almost all of them have a music background, but they're administrators. They're, you know, they're managers of this program or this program. And so there's a lot of people behind the scenes, but, you know, if you want to work at Juilliard, having, you know, a background in classical music would really help. Like Josiah, if he wants to go on to do law, and, you know, when you go to law school, they don't necessarily want everyone to have like political science as their undergrad, because they want a more unique understanding amongst lawyers. Like if all of them went to, you know, poli-sci classes, it'd be like, oh, this is boring. Like they want people with different backgrounds. Like there's a lot of law that's involved in music, and that, you know, just be something that Josiah would have a more intimate understanding of. You know, like Noah, I think he could be a really good engineer. I don't know how you put that together, but you know, there's sound engineers, there's a ton of stuff, you know, that you can do. And if it's something like, if like, let's say they're in orchestras, let's say they're in the San Francisco Symphony, or let's say they're in, most of these people that are in symphonies, or even soloists also do something else. They teach, or you know, that something else could be, you know, maybe sound engineering or something like or law, or you know, that those are the sorts of things you can kind of do on the side, you know. So I don't know, I definitely want everybody's eyes to be, like all the kids' eyes to be open to the possibilities that are out there, and not just be super narrowly focused. But at the same time, I mean, why waste, if you could do something really cool for undergrad, or something kind of like, I'm not really that into it for undergrad, why not do something cool like music? And for a lot, like, unless you're going to be a doctor, you probably have to do biology or whatever, or it's recommended or whatever. But for a lot of degrees, you know, or you know, even not necessarily degrees, you know, maybe certificate programs or this or that, having an undergrad in music is fantastic, you know. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, and you know, if the kids want to be soloists and this and that, I'm like, you know, go for it. Who knows? I mean, nowadays, if you don't know who they are, you know, you'd have to watch them to see what they do. But there's a couple of guys named Two Set Violin, and you know, none of them, they haven't won the Tchaikovsky competition or anything that's like, you know, like paves the way for you to be a soloist. But they're doing world tours, probably for sold out shows. You know, also the piano guys, two cellos. Like, there's ways to kind of make it where you can just kind of tour the world and sell out stadiums, and probably make, you know, what the doctor or lawyer are making, and still do just purely music. Or I mean, Two Set Violin does a lot of comedy and social media and so forth, but I mean, it mostly music, you know. So there's so many opportunities, and I want the kids to be open to those opportunities. And sorry if I sound like a flibbity gibbet. I'm really tired, because Moses sometimes will wake up in the middle of the night and not go back to sleep. And sometimes I'll just let him cry it out. Like the whole, like, I read this book called Baby Wise. I used to like, you know, have to like rock him back to sleep and this and that. And then I read the Baby Wise book, and they're like, you know, a kid needs to learn how to put themselves to sleep. So, you know, the whole sleep training thing, it's like you just stick them in bed, you can make sure they're fed and changed and loved and all the things that's supposed to happen to a baby, and be like, when it's nap time or sleep time, it's like, okay, this is bed. And the idea is for them to learn, because it's hard to learn how to fall asleep, I guess, as a baby, and so it's a way for them to learn how to fall asleep. Moses is having a hard time like being sleep trained, I guess, because he wakes up in the middle of the night, and usually I'm like, okay, I'll nurse him or whatever, and then just stick him back in the bed. But I didn't want to let him cry, because Anna and Elijah had auditions today, and so I basically like tossed and turned and nursed him all night long, which I never do, because I'm like, kid, you're old, you know. You don't need that. But just to keep him quiet, because I didn't want him crying and waking up the kids before their auditions. And so anyway, if I am less coherent than I normally am, which is pretty bad because I'm usually pretty incoherent, I ask for your forgiveness. Anyway, so just if you hear this, you know, any prayers are appreciated. The decisions are still being made, you know, after the auditions happen. So just praying it goes well. And of course, I'll let you know the results, you know. And I've told the kids, you know, it's like in that Facing the Giants movie, you know, if we win, we praise God. If we lose, we praise God. That's the attitude I want our kids to have. That's the attitude I have. But by all means, I'm like, fight for it. Why not? You know, like, why throw in the towel? You know, yeah, there's only 4 spots. Do we give up? No, we don't. We try. We're trying to get 2 of our family's trying to get 2 of those 4 spots. It may be crazy, but with God, all things are possible, and I believe it.
your audition. How does it feel to be done? Good. Daddy says you did a good job. He was listening through the door. Oh, okay, thank you. How'd it go?
Fine. Better than last time.
That's good.